Fringe North Podcast Series. So each episode will have some exciting guests from our amazing community of performers and creators who will give us an inside look into both their lives as artists and what they're bringing to the festival this season. Hello, bonjour, Annie. Hola. Excited to be joined by Brian Tremblay. So Brian, thanks so much for joining me.
Anytime. Thank you for having me.
So I've been introduced to your work and I see that you're a photographer and a musician, but it seems like your main interest is in storytelling, like especially nostalgic kind of storytelling. Can you a bit more about it?
Yes. I like to refer to myself as a musician and a photographer or artist or whatever the case may be, because, hey, photography doesn't exist anymore as they in the business. But I'm very much a storyteller. I think I've been through the phase where I played music that was, cover songs of other bands and so on and so forth, and tried to write songs like that. And it's always felt empty. And then I started getting into country music, and I'm not talking about what you hear on the radio. I'm talking about, way back when. And I started listening to those songs and listening to the stories that they were telling. And I went, yeah, I kind of like that idea. And so to make it more interesting and more fun for myself, I actually just started, try to tell stories in the songs as much as I can. And other times it's just word play and word fun, and see where it goes.
Yes. Do you have any musical inspiration? Like, I listened to some of your music and the storytelling. I was kind of thinking of like John Prine, some of those country guys. Do you have any? Yeah,
John Prine.
Definitely, he's a great storyteller when it comes. But the guy who really turned my head was Townes Van Zandt, and
yes, nice.
Townes has since passed
away at a young age, and from all his hard living. I think I don't want to live like that because I'm 62 years old and I don't think I'll quite have, I'll be putting an end to my career quicker than I think. But a way with words and a way he told stories that I'd never experienced. And then that brought me actually to another guy by the name of Blaze Foley. And Blaze wrote some fantastic songs and some fun songs, and that kind of stuff. And those two guys really introduced me to that style of music. And then that brought me down the rabbit hole of the beginnings of country music. And then you start looking at the Carter family and Rogers. And then I started watching that country music 10-part series by Ken
Burns.
Thank you.
Yeah. I watched that. It's incredible.
I bought it. I liked it so much. I bought it because it's fantastic. And there's another one called American Culture, I think, or something. But it's one you can get also on the movie rentals. And it's they're basically using 19, and this is stuff that's cut directly to the lathe, directly to the record. So you get one take. But it's a 3-part series. And again, introduced to all kinds of this stuff of where did rock and roll come from? Rock and roll came from there. Where did jazz come from? It came from there. Stories, I hear those sounds. And I was a guy with a guitar. And here's where other people with just guitars or fiddles or banjos or auto harps. And they were making stories and everything. And I'm going, I'm trying too hard, band, drummer, taking care of people. I'm trying too hard. This is what I'm going to do. And
that's great. Peeling it back to a really earnest place, it sounds like.
Yes.
And do you do live recordings mostly? Is that
well?
I guess you could say I record a performance when I make my album. It starts with me. I mean, a lot of times they do in the what they call the click track, and a guitarist just plays and sings the words in his head. I've taken the route that many other producers do, and they get a performance. So it's just me and the guitar playing, but I use 2 microphones. So if I don't like my vocals, I can replace them, that kind of stuff. But it's all about capturing the performance.
Yeah.
It's I guess you could say it's live. A little bit is added, but it's very stripped down. It's, me and the guitar, maybe me playing the bass over top, my wife adding backup vocals, but that's really all it is. Simple.
Right on. And so you performed at Fringe North last year.
I did.
Yeah.
How did that go?
It was nerve-wracking, I guess, but not in a bad way. It was it was different, I guess. I saw the quality of what everybody else was doing, and these guys were telling real good stories. I had a technical glitch and my slides weren't working properly, and I just, was ready to. That's it. But I persevered, and away I went. And so it was good, but it's because people are there to experience something a little different. So they let me back in this time again. So I guess I must have done okay.
And yeah, I'm sure you did great. And we are our biggest critics, right? Artists. So
yeah, that's
the wanting to connect with people, but it's a way more solitary thing. Like I don't have to worry about the performance side, so I have huge respect for performing artists. I think it's a really special art form. I think it's kind of one of our most accessible and community-based ones. Like it's just, to me, like a huge vein of art and culture right now is music and the performing arts.
Yeah.
So much, yeah. And like what can what have you been doing to prepare for the performance this year? Like what's
well, I've had
the show this year is called In the Tracks of the Black Bear, and I figured if I'm going to apply for because I'm a little bit different than the artists that they get there, because they do very theatrical things. There's dialogue and so on and so forth, dance and music and so on and so forth. And I'm just some old guy in a cowboy hat playing, these songs kind of thing. So I knew I had to come up with something different. So I decided this year I had the thought rolling around in my head, but it's called In the Tracks of the Black Bear. And I wrote 6 or 7 new songs, but they're done in that style and in that vein of, the old 1930s, 1940s type train songs. And then I play 6 or 7 other ones, the traditional ones, Wabash Cannonball and, John Henry and that kind of stuff. And Drill Ye Terriers Drill. And, these are all old railroad work songs. And the reason I did it is my father worked on the ACR. My uncles, my cousins worked on the ACR through Hawk Junction and Chapleau. And like I said, my dad did. What else there? They were born, and my siblings were born in like Chapleau and Hawk Junction and stuff like that. So I have that kind of train thing going on with me.
And that's when I started putting it together. And then
I performed the concert once so far. It was for about 15 or 20 people, and it came across okay, and there were no technical glitches. So that's what you're getting this year. Is you're getting a little bit of the old-fashioned train songs kind of thing, with new ones and some old ones at the same time, with some stories and again pictures of
the ACR and those kind of things.
Nice. So are these your own pictures that are you putting up on a slide kind of deal? Is that
no?
These are ones that have come from people who've taken them all. Like these are old photographs. You know what I mean?
Historical photographs,
black and white stuff, and it's stuff that's done on wet plate. You can tell it's so old, right? Color that is probably from the 50s and 60s, because you can tell that color.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing it. And you have a photography background, right? You've been doing photography for a few decades now.
Well, yeah, I started in 1993, and then in 1998 I went full time, and up until 2016, the things started to show things were changing in photography in 2010, and 2016 it was pretty much dried up for me. It was dried up for a lot of the photographers. I mean, there's only one full-time person left in town.
So you started photography in the 90s and that you made a career of it.
Yeah, I did.
I got lucky.
Okay.
Yeah.
What kind of
like, was it mostly?
It was
mostly, yeah. It was consumer. I call that consumer photography. So portraits and families and weddings and that kind of stuff. But I always did my own personal work. I exhibited in galleries and that kind of thing. That's where my heart really was, and I really liked commercial photography. I started getting as much commercial photography I was getting everything else. I was working for all kinds of companies across Canada who needed.
Nice.
I went from there, and when I got rid of my studio and that, I went down to now I shoot film.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
You shoot you shoot film photography.
I shoot
film cameras, film photography. I have probably about half a dozen cameras that take film. I have a pinhole camera. I have a 4x5 camera.
Yeah.
The one that looks
I saw
the old press pictures that the guys take like
that. And they're fantastic. They're fantastic. It slows everything right down. You're not just pressing that shutter button, letting it go, and then hoping there's one in there that you like.
Yeah.
So I checked out some of your photos, and I was wondering if some of those black and white ones were film. There's a quality. This will obviously nostalgia that comes. You're taking photos of these old buildings in Sault Ste. Marie, right? Mostly around Sault Ste. Marie.
Yeah,
of course. And anywhere, if I happen to be anywhere and it's a cool looking building, I'll take it. But yeah, I've done a lot of them here in the Soo. Correct. Yeah. It was called The Neighborhood, and those were pictures I took of where I lived and grew up and landmarks and stuff like that. And that's what the music was based around.
Yeah. I remember you talking about that in your previous podcast, which if anyone's listening right now, you can check out on YouTube where you're seeing the podcast. So last year Garrett interviewed you, right?
Right.
I'm kind of curious to
know about like how you got into photography. I know a little bit about how you started music from your previous podcast.
Sure.
There was someone that you admired
who was boarding at your parents, right?
He was actually a Greyhound hockey player. My parents boarded Greyhounds. Yeah, and his name was I don't even remember his name. Yeah, my wife won't like this. I can't remember whatever she tells me to do, but I can remember this from 45 years ago. His name was Jim Boyington, and he was a player for the Soo Greyhounds, and he had a Gibson SG guitar, and I remember him playing along to B.B. King records. And that was it. I was struck.
Photography.
It was because my mother was she was not a photographer. She just loved family snaps. That's all it was. And she had every kind of camera, anything possible. She tried them all. SX70, Polaroid, the peel apart, the instant ones. She would try disc cameras or, anything and everything, 35 millimeter point and shoots. Yeah. My mother had all the cameras. My father was into Super 8 movie cameras. And when he got old, when he retired, he got a video camera of, a tape. So he was having that going on. And I guess you just kind of take up the mantle and you start taking pictures, and, it allows you to, I think a good way to put it, it has allowed me into places I normally could never have gotten into.
And what do you mean by this? Like, because I feel like I could take this in a literal sense or in psychological kind of more.
Maybe that, but mine, I mean it in the literal sense. I'll give you an example. When the Greyhounds won the Memorial Cup moons ago, there was still the old arena downtown. I went there and I was taking a photography course, and I thought I could get a cool assignment on it was a news type picture. Camera bag and my camera around my neck. And I was going to just say, hey, I think they had tickets or something like that. And I said, listen, I'm not really there for that. Here's what I do kind of thing. I had my whole speech prepared. Right. Around and looking around to see who was my best person to approach and so on and so forth. And all of a sudden, one of the security guys looked at me and he pointed at me and waved me over. I was in trouble. The camera saw me and he said, here, come on this way. He says, just let me in.
Nice.
And I
That's
took all
perfect.
the
Camera.
I wanted. Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't ask me what I was doing. Didn't ask me anything. Yeah. Just that was it.
Capture it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And they just, my whole attitude, and I taught that to my students when I taught at the college. I always say, look like you're supposed to be there, and that's always done it for me, and, you get into all kinds of places like that, I remember a concert, I was doing it for the arena at the time when they first opened up, to get all the concerts they were to promote and stuff like that.
Mhm.
The arena said, yeah, Anne Murray's people want to know if you want to stay till the end and come and I'm getting paid.
Right on.
Yeah, there was no money, and I said, "Well, Anne
Murray got paid. I'm not. See you later. I'm out." Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. So
It does that.
Yeah. Right
The
on.
art has not necessarily been so opening
for me, but yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like if you're an artist, you're a creative person, it seems very typical for artists to have like a professional kind of what their niche kind of, like you're a photographer. But then sometimes you get so caught up in the rules, the work, the business side of it that you need a sort of creative outlet, right?
Yeah.
And to me, that's what
photography having died in 2010. I have some ideas in terms of like, okay, now everyone's taking photos. Everyone has their phone.
Yep.
Everyone has access to half decent cameras,
especially now.
Yeah.
But what does that mean, and why did that happen, and how did it affect the
Soo? I'm sure, like any other city, and I've talked to other photographers, it was the same thing. It was the democratization of photography. There was no longer a barrier to entry.
Okay.
You can't just say, I'm going to be a lawyer. There's a barrier to entry. What's the barrier?
Yeah.
Education.
Yeah.
You can't just say, I'm going to be a nurse. Same thing. There's a barrier to entry. We used to have a barrier to entry as photographers. That barrier was the fact that we had to learn these big camera systems, not just a 35 millimeter. You needed the ones that shot 6 by 6 centimeters negatives and bigger sometimes, depending what you were doing.
Yeah.
And the way you learned that is you worked with another photographer. Even if you shot color film, even if you didn't develop it, you had to know how to, what they called rating it. You had to know how to rate it with its ISO. And you knew how to adjust the ISO to give you a better exposure or a more exposure of certain tonal areas across the negative. So you would learn how to do that kind of stuff, and you would burn film and throw film out because that's what it was. You had to learn it that way. Then you learned black and white film and how to process it and how to print it. And that gave you a lot of insight. Along comes the digital camera. And the first ones were okay. And then as the displays got bigger on the back, and then they can move them around and everything like that, people were getting these pictures. Then they came out with, 4K and all that stuff. And now when you take a picture on these cameras, you see this picture. It's bright, it's sharp, it's exposed, dead on the money. And I believe a lot of people are lulled into a false sense of security.
Yeah.
They're like, oh,
I can make money with this. Now, look, I'm guilty as the next guy is. You know what I mean? Of trying something and going, how can I monetize this? Which sometimes is my problem. But that's what was happening. So their shingle and start photographing weddings and portraits and babies and blah, 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 the whole deal, because they don't have to print. They don't have to know proper exposure, and they don't have to know any of that stuff.
Yeah. It's done for them. Yeah.
But now it's taken an even more interesting turn. Nikon and Canon no longer manufacture 35 millimeter DSLR bodies.
Great.
Point and shoot cameras aren't made anymore. They don't make them.
I think Pentax is still making one, but still,
that's it. So
yeah.
It's a wild world.
Fringe North Festival, where magic of theatre meets the multi-arts extravaganza. Experience the unexpected with captivating performances, mesmerizing music, and stunning art. Inside and outside the iconic Sault Ste. Marie Museum Clock Tower, in the heart of downtown Sault Ste. Marie, where history meets the arts in celebration like no other. Join us at the Fringe North Festival and make memories that will last a lifetime. Fringe North Festival. For more information, visit our website at soufringe.com or find us on social media.
I'm glad I'm not competing in it anymore.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know what's going to happen. Obviously, for the commercial, corporate side of for artists, if artists are employed to take photos for a purpose, for a commercial, for whatever marketing purposes, obviously they're not going to pay photographers anymore. But
as artists, we still have the ability
to pick up film cameras, to pick up, traditional mediums, and to connect back.
Yeah.
And I think that, it'll always be
like now I'm going on a bit of a rant, but I just,
it's the
I've been there, done that. Trust me, it doesn't help.
Yeah. It's the doom and gloom, of what's next. I think you mentioned the hit that photography has taken. I think, for a lot of art forms, not just photography, for, film writing, for music,
etc.
Digital has ruined the music business too.
Totally.
Completely.
Yeah. And we talk, you were talking about like photographers knowing how to develop their photos. It's like, it's like anyone could be kind of a producer now. Like you basically don't even have to know notation. You don't have to know how like relative keys. Like it's just, I'm not a music aficionado, a producer. I've never tried it, but it's just like, all right, a lot of stuff sounds exactly the same now. And the life is just totally drained.
Yeah.
But yeah, getting a little
negative. There's still so much great stuff out there. And I think
there is. Yeah.
Yeah. There will always be artists
like yourself, like so many people, so many folks that are coming to Fringe. Like this is a very visceral, human thing to perform in front of people. And like you mentioned, their mistakes can happen, and I think that's just part of the beauty and part of the connection, part of the humanity of the thing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I got a little off track.
That's okay.
But I'm kind of curious to know
about what your creative process is like. I mentioned I'm a painter, and anyways, I find for me it ebbs and flows a ton. And it often I have to kind of catch it when I do, but I do a lot of stuff outside of actual painting to get myself prepared. But I just want to know a little bit about how you kind of navigate either photography or music. Yeah.
Well, I'll just say the photography, I haven't been shooting really anything much lately. Believe it or not, I use my phone quite a bit. I got a phone upgrade and the pictures are incredible. So, but yeah, so I haven't been chasing it down. And I do feel guilty about that. But by the same token, it costs money to do the photography the way I want to do it because it then requires film and it requires chemistry and so on and so forth. Mind you, I have a scanner, so that's the printing part is easy if I want to go that way. But when you decide to pursue your music and work for yourself, because I still have my media company that I do freelance for all kinds of things for. So when you have that and you don't have a day job or a part-time job to fill in for you, some of those other things begin to suffer because you don't have the finances. So you got to decide what's your priority. So right now, photography hasn't been super creative. I haven't said, oh, I want to go do this and this and this. I guess I just haven't figured out what it is. I do have a project in mind, but it's not coming together as easy as I'd like because it's going to require a little bit of travel. So hopefully that will work. So I do have an idea. As far as the music goes, I don't know if I have ADHD, which I think I do. But I planned out 5 albums, like future albums.
Yeah.
I have enough time, no, I don't.
It'll be the public will decide whether it's any good or not.
but I have all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't make it a point of saying, and this is why, like on Music Row in Nashville and stuff like that, they actually have guys that go to work in the morning. You go to work in the morning, you write songs. You take your lunch break, you go back, you go write on some more songs.
I don't know if I could do that, because
after a while, I mean, you're kind of pushing it, you're forcing it.
Yeah.
Johnny Cash, I think, said that too. Said, well,
how do you write songs and blah, 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 and like that. And he says, well, I just go for a walk. I go somewhere. I go for a walk in the forest, or whatever. You talk to somebody and you get some ideas. And that's basically what it really boils down to. You don't write anything until you feel it. You don't, and what is it that sometimes set me off? Sometimes it's usually a phrase, that turns, helps me turn something into a song. Let me see if I can find an example of my notes here. Well, yeah, there's a couple of words that I wrote down here. Boot Hill, which is what they always call the Western cemeteries, Boot Hill.
Okay.
And, fighting and being buried at Boot Hill, and turned it into something sad, with a Spanish señorita involved in the whole deal. So that's why I just kept it there. Another one I heard was called Whiskey Row. I don't know where that came from, but I went, ooh, that's a good one. And then there was a Vengeance Ride. And like somebody went on a vengeance ride, and I went, ooh, I like that too.
Yeah.
I make stories up. I went for a walk, and I got this from Dolly Parton. She said she does it. So I went, hey, Dolly does it. I'm going to do it too. Dolly says she went for a walk in the graveyards, and she'd go in the old parts of the graveyard, and she would see names. She goes, I would just see the names, and then depending how it went, she'd make up stories about the person. These songs are going to be on a future album, but I was in the old cemetery on Queen Street. Are you from here?
No, I'm not, but I've spent a bit of time. I'm from other part of Northern Ontario.
Gotcha.
Nice. Yeah.
Well, there's an old 19th century cemetery, maybe early 20th century cemetery on Queen Street.
A residential area. And I like going in
there. It's kind of cool because there's a lot of historical people from the city, who are buried there. But there was a gravestone laying in the back corner. It was really dirty, so I rubbed it in a little bit, and it had a name on it called Nellie Wesley Hale. Like a criminal's name, because they always give them three names, right? John Wilkes Booth, that kind of stuff. The Ballad of Nellie Wesley Hale, and I made her a female gunslinger bank robber. How's that?
That's hilarious.
And I made up a story about her capture and everything. Yes.
Yeah. That's interesting.
It'd be funny to hear.
So that's what my creative
process is like. Anyway.
Yeah. That's great.
So interesting. It's really unique to hear. And I kind of relate in a way of like this made up. It's all part of the intuition and subconscious, right? Like
it's creativity, but it's parts of things.
And by the sound of it, it's parts of history for around like Northern history and stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Which lends
totally to country music.
Yeah. And the folk and the country and those kind of country blues and that kind of the Americana, definitely. Yeah.
Storytelling and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the intuitive process. But that's interesting to hear, the walking and the going to graves. I didn't know Dolly Parton did that.
It was something in a brief little interview, and I found it, and it was like, and I think I've written 2 songs like that. The other one was, all I found was her name was Sarah, and then there was Beloved Husband. I couldn't read what his name was, so I wrote a song about. It's called Oh Sarah, and it's about a woman who comes to North America and Canada and marries a fur trapper, but ends up not being able to survive the winters and
passes away, kind of thing. So one
of those unrequited love kind of story.
Yeah.
Typical old themes. I like.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. It's their
historical creative historical kind of fiction, right?
Yeah.
It's neat. Yeah.
So yeah, you have done a number of performances. Like you've done, this is going to be your second performance with Fringe North or third?
Second with Fringe North, yeah. And I have
their festivals coming, and yeah.
Cool. And you have done some circuits, playing in bars and stuff, and playing for venues and in the Soo a little bit, or
yeah. I mean, I've done everything. Like I've done the cover band, like everybody else has done, and then I don't play so much bars, like dancing and drinking bars, because that's not that's not my style of music. And I mean, nothing wrong with that, but that's not a fit for me. But yeah, any kind of a venue where I can get 15 or 20 people that want to sit down and listen to me, I'll play for you.
Yeah. How has community impacted your work? Do you feel like it might be missing, or do you feel very fulfilled? Like what's the vibe here?
Well, I'm not really sure. I'm sure others, maybe younger folks, would tell you the vibe is, oh, it's wonderful, it's great.
Yeah.
I think
it's good, but there's the community lacks knowledge on why musicians need their support. And I mean, look, folks, it's not just liking our Facebook post. It should be minimum of sharing our Facebook post. And the other thing is, when we say support, we mean you hope you buy something.
Yeah. Any artists.
Yeah, we have
T-shirts and merch and stuff like that, because streaming does not pay. YouTube, one song stream is 0.00069 cents. You know what I mean? Spotify 0.0437. And now they don't even pay anybody who has less than 1,000 streams. They take your money and they distribute it amongst the larger, more earning artists.
Yeah.
So now, so we have to know that, you got to buy a ticket. You got to buy a ticket. You got to go to the shows. You got to buy the album. You got to buy the music. Streaming it doesn't do anything. How did they say, if you wanted to make it $40,000 a year, I don't know, 40 million or 40 billion streams to make that much money.
Which is not, the regular artist is not streaming that much, obviously.
Exactly.
It's tough for.
But the community has to learn that. I think that's the community has to learn that, because when they see, somebody trying to get ahead, well, you do what you can. You try to buy some merch, buy a button, buy anything off of them, and help them out. And the other thing too is that Fringe is very good that way, because they are licensed, and this is one of the reasons why we weren't successful in having Sault Ste. Marie designated as a music city, is that the venues all need to have SOCAN licenses.
Venues all do. The promoters all need to have them,
whether they like it or not. That's the bottom line. Public performance of our music should be paid for.
Yeah.
We're not making, trust me, we're not getting rich.
No. And it's not about getting rich. It's about sustaining and buying canopy.
Exactly. It's not, thank you. People have this thing, the fact that you're a musician, you must be rich, you must be rock star. And well, no, I'm not. And really, I don't want to be. All I want to do is make a living.
Totally. Yeah.
And, you go from there. But the community is getting better. The city is providing lots of opportunities for musicians, here and there, which is getting great in that respect. Thank heavens there's places like Fringe who have a really great policy for, anybody who gives me a second chance, gives, or a second shot, I shouldn't say a chance, a second shot at it. They must be doing something right. I'll back them. I'll back them on anything they do, because that's that's what it's all about. Somebody's got to step up.
Yeah. And I think that, smaller organizations are recognizing that we do, like we have to pay artists, we have to follow, like SoCan. I'm not as familiar with SoCan, but with now I can't remember the name, but it's basically like the visual artist kind of union. And there's base level pays, it's like you shouldn't be expected to do free work. It's time for smaller organizations to step up and to seek out the money, because it is there. Hopefully it continues to be there. There is funding. It's a lot of hard work. But we kind of have to keep building up the artists, and it's doable. And I'm new to Fringe North, but it's exciting to see what they've been able to do. Do you have any input or advice for young artists like starting out, whether they're musicians, photographers, any of the sorts?
If you have any desire to do it beyond your living room or house or dwelling or wherever you are, just go out and do it, but do it a lot. I'm going to speak from a musician's end of thing. Get on stage, go to what they call these open mics they have. That's what I did. I went and got up and played in these matinees and stuff like that. And the band would let me up, and eventually they see me in the audience. Hey, come on up, Brian, do some songs. And you get a lot of experience like that. You play with guys who are much better than you are, and you can't help but to bring up your game, So locally, I had a lot of guys here in town that were fantastic. And, the musicians that were there at those open mics and that were, they're still out there playing today to some of these guys. But everybody's fantastic in that respect. So that's what you got to do. You got to get out there and you just got to perform. Go busk. If someone says, come play for whatever. I never condone playing for free, but if you're going to go and negotiate something, you know what I mean? Can I have a drink, a bar tab? Can I have a meal? Pass the tip jar, that kind of thing. And I still remember, being turned down for a gig to play at somebody's camp. This was 15 years ago. And I said, well, yeah, it was, east a bit. Yeah, I said, $300. Whoa, for the two of you? Yeah, and I got to drive all the way out there, and I bring all my gear, and I got to bring all the way back, and how about all that rehearsing that we do, and blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? And I figure, well, I won't go any further than that story. I'll say something I'll regret. Anyways, but that's the kind of thing. So, the fact that musicians are playing for the same they played for 30 years ago in venues, well, don't improve that. There's lots of great concerts in that coming, but I think one of the things the community could help is that if they get local people to open for them, that doesn't necessarily can make it all the time, but an effort should be made. See what happens.
Totally.
Yeah. So, but I say, get out there. You just got to
go out there and play. Make art, make bad art. Doesn't matter. Yeah. Put it out. I don't care. Put it in front of people. Don't be shy, and, but if you can get your work out there and stand next to it proudly and let the barbs come, because they will, do it. And that's the way you build a tough skin. You learn, okay, well, maybe this didn't work. Let's try something else. And the only way you can do that is by trying it and see what happens. As they say, throw it against the wall, see if it sticks.
And you'd be surprised, a lot of it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You really would.
Yeah. And the cool part about that is, from what I've experienced, is you have something that's yours at the end of the day,
Yeah.
Have something that's yours.
Yeah.
And that
can get you through a lot of stuff. Something to fall back on that is yours. It's very, yeah, it's powerful stuff, being creative.
Mm-hmm.
But I really appreciate,
I really appreciate your chat. I look forward to seeing your performance.
Me too.
Fringe North.
Fringe North is happening August 21st to 25th.
Yeah.
In Sault Ste. Marie.
And Brian Tremblay,
we'll have another chat sometime soon, but we're excited to host you again this year.
Yeah.
And I think I'm performing my show, and I think I'm even doing some busking somewhere.
Right.
Yeah. There's the other advice
I give to the musicians. Go busk. It's a great way to practice. Great way to rehearse.
That's some good stuff. Yeah. I've yet to busk. I think that's my first step if I ever want to
go for it. Yeah.
Break away a little bit. But anyways, I really appreciate the chat, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you again, Emelie.